Welcome to Field and Foley, episode 14, with Yann van der Cruyssen and Raphaël Monnin. For the first time, we bring together two distinguished professionals who have made their mark in the realm of sound. First, we have Yann, a composer and sound designer celebrated for his work on the video game Stray, which garnered accolades including Best Sound Design for an Indie Game, PlayStation Game of the Year, and Best Debut Indie Game. Yann's creative prowess extends far beyond gaming, though, encompassing software synthesis, programming, music composition, writing, and more. Joining him is Raphaël Monnin, a versatile French sound designer, sound editor, and mixer whose expertise spans soundscapes for film, TV, documentaries, and video games. Raphaël has lent his talents to diverse projects, including his role as a sound designer and Foley artist for Stray. With an extensive background, he has delved into music composition, production, mixing, and mastering. And together, Yann and Raphaël bring a wealth of experience and insights into the sonic world. So join us as we delve into their artistic journeys and uncover the secrets of crafting unforgettable soundscapes for various media. So hello to both of you, and thank you for taking the time to coming on the show.
Hello.
Hello.
And a little shout out to Heli Linos, who suggested you as guest because she's a big fan of Stray and she also submitted some questions. So my first question would be, Stray, the video game, has received widespread acclaim, and one important part of it is the auditory experience because there's no dialogue as such in the game. So can you share maybe your philosophy on creating the soundscapes for enhancing the player experience in the game?
Obviously, since there is no dialogue, an important part was to give the robots a distinctive voice, but we couldn't really afford to record the voices, like record the dialogues. It has been suggested to us at some point that we could do this, but I didn't really want it to do this. I didn't. I preferred them to stay abstract, but I didn't want the robot voices to conflict too much with the text, so it needed to be. I wanted sounds that would convey the idea of being voices, but far enough from the actual human voices, so you could tell it's robots. I didn't want it to evocate the actual text, and I didn't want the player to feel that it was actual humans speaking and processed voice. So I had to do a lot of research for the voices to feel synthetic enough. And that goes for about all the sounds in the game. I knew it was important since it takes place into a world where humans have disappeared. So they are still there. You can see pictures of them. Sometimes there are some informations about the humans that were there at some point, but they have disappeared and they are not there. So I wanted the soundscape to feel the same way. I wanted to avoid anything that would sound too human, but it needed to be reminiscent of humans in some way, like in some distant way, through processed sounds or music that would remind some kind of human music.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting thing for me is that they all have like a distinctive style. For example, with the character Momo, I seem to hear like some Atari kind of sounds, some old school console sounds, or the bartender has a very distinct one. So how did you come up with like the different characters? Did you like go through them each by for each and decide what their character is and then decide the appropriate sounds, or did you just experiment and see what matched like the visuals?
No, when I did some research about the sound, the voices, I created a lot of voices that you cannot hear in the final game. I made a lot of experiments but it never felt right for the other designers. They always they weren't happy with it, so I went on creating many voices. But as I was working on this, the game was not totally set up. Like there were the characters were changing all the time, so I could not really do research for precise characters. And just in general, in that game, not only the voices, but everything in the game that is duplicated at various points is usually randomized in a deterministic way, which means that even for, I don't know, for raindrops, for instance, there are a lot of places in the game when you can see a thread of water falling from a roof, for instance. There are about, I don't know, like 30 raindrop sounds with various textures. And for each of them, the game will choose one sample and one pitch and one amplitude, like one gain. And it will always be the same for every player, for every, like it will always be the same because it's based on the object ID in the game.
I see,
and the same goes for the voices. Like most of the voices, there are, I don't know if you remember, Raphaël, how many voices there are, but let's say, I don't know, 20.
Yeah, something like this.
The game will pick one of them and say, okay, this character has one of them, and it's going to be biased by a certain pitch, certain variations. But then we, as designers, we can always override this. So for the most important characters, such as Momo, I created a custom voice that is only associated with this particular character. And I did this for the most obvious ones, but for the generic robots, they just picked one out of the 20 generic voices. So some of them can have the same voice with a pitch difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
And you were talking about the Atari sounding. Maybe one thing that makes you think that is I used something called linear predictive coding. It's something that it's still used today, but it has been used extensively during the 80s, 70s, 80s. It's the algorithm that is famously used in the speak and spell chip.
Oh, yes, I know that one.
And yeah, this is really something that colors the voices a lot, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's not Atari, but it's the kind of the same era, probably.
Yeah, it's from the era, yeah. It reminds me of my childhood. That's cool. I mean, obviously you took some inspirations from, as you just said, like from the speak and spell. Do you have any other like influences or inspirations that you referenced that you influenced your decisions on the sound design?
So some of the sounds come from old technology. Like I have a lot of old computers, synths, stuff like that at home, or that I recorded at some point. So I know that at some point there is one sound coming from an old modem, like a 56K, you know. I'm not sure how younger generations perceive this. Like, do they know about it? But we instantly recognize that kind of sound. I know that I also used something. It's something that we have in France called Minitel. It's it didn't produce sound, but there are sounds that it makes sounds when you press buttons, when it has a, like the screen is emitting some kind of hiss, and I recorded all that and I used all that in the game. It has a kind of retrofuturistic feeling, so I had to take inspiration from like midly old technology.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. I mean, I'm also thinking that, just like you said, younger generations maybe don't have the same like auditory memory of that, because, we used to hear those modems, so we have those instant connection. But maybe to them it sounds like even fresh, because, they're not used to those sounds. So, it would be interesting to hear how that changes in the future.
Yeah.
We can probably reuse all our old tricks in a couple of years.
Yes, probably. But I also used at some point. I have used recordings from very old technology that even I don't know about, like beginning of 20th centuries phones and stuff like that. So it doesn't evoke me anything, but I have used them for some object. But I think I was obliged to remove them from the game at some point because we weren't sure we were legally allowed to use those. But it was interesting to have a mix of technologies that are like that spans over 1 century or something.
Yeah,
like it's not clearly there.
Yeah, I could really feel that. It wasn't like sounding like an 80s style. It wasn't sounding like a 19th style.
I didn't want that.
Yeah, it was a perfect mix of very many different synthy sounds. So that was very, very well done. Another question I would have, like speaking of recording, because you just mentioned it, and this is of course also a podcast about recording. Whose cat is the main character?
Graphically speaking, I don't know. You know Raphaël.
Graphically speaking, is a cat from Vive, one of the director.
Okay.
So that's his cat. After with sounding, it's I won't be able to say because I think Yann.
It's a mix of many different cats.
Yes.
I try to record cats at the beginning. I try to go to people's place, friends who own a cat, and record them, but they never want to. They are not really complying to. But I think one of the main cat that I like the voice of the cat, the meows. I recorded cats for the voices. I recorded also some cats for the walking sounds. Some of the cat sounds are not really made by a cat, but it's a mix. One cat that was really useful was the cat from Eric Chahi, is a French developer. He is working not far from the place where we worked. So I was discussing with him at some point. He said, "Oh, there is one cat. It's not my cat, but he comes every day at the same time and scratches the door and meows. So I could just set a microphone and wait for him." And he did that. And he sent me the recordings, and that turned out to be some of the best recording that I had. Like some of the also most neutral recordings, because some of the meows that I had were good, but you could really tell that the cat was asking for something or annoyed about something. And I could not really use that in a generic way. If the players just press meow, you don't know why, and it needed to be neutral enough.
A neutral meowing, that's awesome. Yeah. So you got the sounds for a stray cat from a stray cat. That's very cool.
Probably stray cat. We
Probably,
don't know, actually. We don't know what this cat.
No, that's how it usually goes with cats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and because you were just speaking about like different emotions, did you use like any techniques to try to evoke something from a cat, like play with them, or like, or did you just have to put in a lot of hours to get all the sounds you needed?
At some point, I listened to all the meows that I had, and I classified them into maybe about 20 categories. Like he's annoyed, he's happy, whatever. But I don't think in the end, I didn't use that much of them. Or I used some of them at some very precise point, but the one that I use the most of the time is the neutral one. Sometimes I know that I have put zones, like depending on where the cat is. For instance, if the cat is very close to an enemy and the player decides to meow for some reason, I will choose a meow that is not the neutral one, because it makes sense. The context makes sense in that case. But apart from that, I suppose, apart from the mews, I think that most of the cat sounds were the walking, jumping, falling sounds. Or I don't remember. We did that together with Raphaël, the walking.
Yeah.
And I think for most part it was not a real cat. We just recorded custom. Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're recording like custom Foley, like for movement and stuff. Like as you said, Yann, for jumps and land and walk, and all depends on surfaces. When we had new surfaces in games, so we were just like recording new sound on those surfaces, basically. So yeah, and movement as well for. Sometimes for some cinematic and stuff, when the cat sit, for all the idols and stuff. So we were just doing like movement, like real Foley as you watch what's happening on the screen, and you try to perform a bit. Then for cinematics, for example, or animation, so specific animation. So yeah.
Yeah, did you have like any interesting props for the Foley? I mean, what did you use for the cat paws, for example, Raphael?
Specifically Foley was for the scratch, for when the cat scratch. I think Yann did already some, because I arrived in the project almost at the end of the production. So Yann already did a lot, but at the end we had more surfaces and stuff. So for example, I used needles for scratching. And I was just taking few needles in my hand, and for example, when the cat scratch on wood, I will take a wood board and scratch a wood board, or metal board, carpet as well, and same with all the surfaces for footsteps. They are basically I remember some of the footsteps as well, trying different things with my fingers. But sometimes he was not making enough noise. For example, when the cat walk on the carpet, so I took gloves as well, some gloves. And I was just trying, different things. And when I thought it sounded good, I mean, we didn't know how it sounded till we cut it and put it in the game and tried it. So sometimes we were recording some sound, and I remember that's okay, but that it's not enough. So we were just redoing it and replacing the sounds till we thought it sounded good for both of us.
I also think that a small part of like some components of the cat sounds are synthesized. And I think the reason is that for instance, the jumping and falling sounds, they are there to give you an impression of a real cat, but we could not really use. They are also there to give a feedback to the player, and if you put the sound that a real cat will actually do, it's when you jump and you fall, it's sometimes it doesn't make enough noise, or it doesn't make a very precise signal for the player to understand that okay, the jump is taken into account, or I arrived at in the surface and I have to continue. So I had to put some rules that, for instance, I don't remember exactly, like that was more than 1 year ago, but I knew that within the game engine I had to compute the absolute distance between the starting point and the ending point of a jump. And if the cat was going downwards, I would use a sound, I would use a slightly louder sound with a small low frequency component that was typically synthesized, just to give the player the impression that pook, you landed on something.
Yeah, nice impact.
I'm not sure that an actual cat would do that bump. It's more like a signal for the player.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, the cats are stealthy, and they have to make as little
sound.
noise. Yeah, they have to make as little noise as possible for hunting, of course. Yeah, but that's I mean, that's the job we have, right? Like trying to figure out how to make it even good for the player, so he has a good signal, but also still sound realistic. But yeah, you did a fantastic job.
The actual cat noise, like I received some recordings from friends who recorded their cat walking, and it's also a lot more random that you could expect. I suppose it's mainly because of the how do you say, like the claws, the nails.
Yeah.
Sometimes if the cat is walking on a wooden material, it would do a lot of sound that don't really sound like each other, and we could not really use that. I've tried at some point to just cut them into small parts and use them randomly, but it's kind of too random for a video game, even if the actual cat is doing that sound. So instead most of the time we choose to use sounds that sound like each other, but there is an additional layer of small asperities that are just triggered sometimes to give variations. But overall it's less random than what a real cat would do.
Makes sense, yeah. And one question probably specific to you, Yann, because you were the composer for Stray. Can you elaborate a bit on your musical influences and how you use that in the game? Because the score is very, I would say, organically and unique. Like it flows into the sound, which is cool.
Yeah, well, I think one of the important thing that I try to keep in mind that I didn't want any human even in the music. So I didn't want any performer. That's why I mainly went for synthesis. I think I wanted the music to be mainly about the environment. I didn't want the music to be too much about the player, like to be rewarding music, or I didn't want the music to comment too much on the gameplay. So I kept very long tracks that were mainly speaking about the mood of places, probably. And since a lot of places are just full of junk and electrical stuff that don't work or are very messy places, I think it made sense for me to have also a lot of small electrical elements in the music that would feel messy as well. I'm not sure about precise. I didn't have any very precise influence that I kept for the whole soundtracks. I had some reference tracks sometimes for sounds, for some specific sounds in a given track, but wouldn't be able to really cite something that influenced me overall.
Yeah, makes sense. I couldn't hear anything specifically as well, but that was why I was wondering. Maybe you had something that I don't know of. But it comes out really really good. Like the feeling of the environment, and especially at those key moments when the music sets in, feels very fitting. Yeah. So one of the things I specifically wanted to ask you about is the robot songs that the musician plays, the robot musician. Did you have like free reign in what to do with those sounds, or was that like a planned thing?
Actually, when we started working on the game, there was just one or two like boom boxes at some point, and it was just an item you would walk by and hear music for like 2 seconds. It wasn't that important, so I created small loops, but those loops were like 10 seconds long. At some point, I implemented something in the radios so that it would switch from one loop to the other, but overall it was not that important. And it's only very late in the development where I realized that at some places you would have no extra diegetic music. You would just be there and the radio would play while you will solve a puzzle that would take you like 10 minutes or something, and you would hear that same loop over and over. And that was during the last 2 years or something. So I thought, I should really extend those loops So I took the existing loops and created longer songs out of them, but it wasn't really planned. And that's also maybe the reason why I didn't really... I initially created those loops as I would create sound effects. So sometimes I created them on the go with some synthesizer, and I didn't keep the separate tracks. I only recorded them in mono because I knew they would be
placed somewhere,
positioned something. So I don't, for most of the songs, I don't even have the stereo tracks. I just have the filtered lo-fi version of them because it wasn't planned that it would at some point take 1 hour of them. But when I knew that those songs would be longer, I was trying to think about... I like the idea that some of the songs would somehow sound like jazz band or something, or just a band, music that human would have done at some point, but that would be recreated or reinvented by robots. So I created those tracks that would sound... Some of the tracks sound somehow jazzy, but you can tell that it's fake instruments.
Fake jazz,
it's heavily synthetic, and I wanted that. I really researched to have a sound that doesn't sound real and sound too simple. And some of the other tracks sound more like sampled music, but it's I wanted it to feel like it was destroyed. It was it had aged in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, just like the whole world. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was wondering specifically about the one robot where you get him some sheet music and then he plays the songs for you on his makeshift guitar. So how did you come up with those? Like, was it just like having fun and trying to find as many things to do in those? Like, I think it was 8 different songs.
Yeah, it was initially just 1 or 2 songs that someone asked me to do because they added these characters. This character was a very, very late addition. It was added just before some trailer where it would appear. So I had to create those songs very quickly. Like, I think I created them in just one morning or something. So I had to be very quick. That's why I reused some of the songs that you can hear in the jukeboxes or in the... I just took the MIDI and made them play by a synth guitar, and some of the songs are more like jokes. I really like, as a player, I really like when there are side quests.
Yeah.
So I thought it was... I didn't like... I tried to spend a bit more time so there would be more than 2 songs. I created 8 of them, and I asked the designer, is it okay if you find some place somewhere for the 8 of them? But I think it was my initiative to make more than 2 of them.
Yeah, it was very cool, and it's also surprising that they sound so different. I mean, one of them was like almost garbled and something, and one of them was very, very emotional, and it was really fun finding those and seeing what the music was. So great idea on that. And follow-up question on that, which is actually from Haley Linus. She wanted to ask, how did you manage to make the game sound so cohesive? Because the music and the sound effects, they blend together so beautifully. So did you have an idea in your head how to implement all those so that it's like you can never tell, to be honest, when the music really starts? At some point you realize, oh, now it's music that's playing. But there's a lot of ambient stuff as well, and there's ebb and flow of stuff, so that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, well, so I think that one part of your question is about the, let's say, the trigger, like when does a music start? And there are two places in the game that are open. You can they are not that linear. So for those places, I made a system in the game that would choose to play a song at some point, it will not be the same experience for every player because of many things, because of the conditions for a song to be played. But most of the time, the idea was that if the player is making a unique action, if is like having a dialogue that they will never hear twice, and that is somehow important, it might be the good place to start a song. I have some playlist of songs that I know would fit with the place, so it will start one of those songs, not necessarily the same. But when I talked to the two main designers of the game, they said that those places were sometimes too silent when they tasted the game, and some players didn't find any clue or didn't do anything important for like 15 minutes. They would complain that the game would stay silent. So I have been thinking about implementing a timer that says if no music has been played for a certain number of minutes, you would play a given song. But I didn't like the fact that it would give a false clue to the player. Because each time the player does something important, the music starts. And if the player is entering a room and by chance the music starts at that point, I was afraid that the player would think that entering this particular room was something important. So that's why I made, for these open places, I created 2 specific tracks per place that would start with a very, very slow fade in, so that you cannot take that as a cue for you to do something as a player. And these 4 tracks, these 4 faded tracks, I created them by just reusing the elements from all the ambient elements that you can hear in all the tracks for a given place. I would reuse them and just add a lot of reverb and granular stuff so that it feels very, very ambient. And yeah, I think it sometimes blends with the electronic sounds and like some of the diegetic sound that you can hear around. That might be what you are speaking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, yeah, that's what I noticed. Like it had elements of the environmental sounds as well, and so it blended in there. And yeah, it makes total sense that it's a slow fade in, because that's how you suddenly think, oh yeah, there's music playing now. Where did it come from? And,
yes,
felt really well made. So great job on that.
Thanks.
Okay, maybe one last question to the music, because that is also something that's interesting. Is do you have any specific like software or hardware synths that you used in the music? Anything that might be like very out there?
Well, I have a few. I think one of the least common things that I used is are recordings that I made at some point with something called Ghost Detector. It's supposed to record sound from ghosts, but it's actually electromagnetic fields. I think it's like a kind of coil that records. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I have used it at some point in a factory, and I have recorded a lot of random fields, noise fields. So I used that, and I've at some point in the past I was really into circuit bending and using old toys and weird electronics and experimenting with them. So I used all that. I kept a lot of recordings from that period, so I have used samples from this, and also one uncommon thing that I used is I have a MS-10, Korg old synthesizer, and while I was working on Strays, it's starting. At some point, it was dead. Like it didn't work. I could not make any sound with it. Then, for some reason, it worked again. 2 years later, I could suddenly make sounds. I don't know why I didn't touch it, but there was a time where it was slightly malfunctioning, and I could record sounds that it was really not supposed to do.
That's awesome.
I would just press a key and it would do a lot of random noise. It would do like 10 seconds of fixed note and then very wobbly sounds, and it just happened. So I used that kind of I used those glitches here and there in both the soundtrack and both the music and the sound effect.
Yeah. A very happy accident. I'm pretty sure
Yes.
it was the ghost that you attracted with your ghost detector. The ghost of the machine. Okay, thank you for that. So, to you, Raphael, because I haven't spoken to you yet for a long time now. Maybe could you provide a bit of insight into your creative process for the sound design? Maybe for Stray specifically, but also for other projects you worked on.
But I can keep going on Stray as well. But because we spoke about synthesizer, and also we were doing some robot reactions into the game, which are not talks at all; they're just reaction. Sometimes, and I remember I was just once playing with one of my synthesizers, so it's just a Roland SH01A, so it's like a new synth which Roland made, which was before the SH101, but it's a kind of clone. And I was playing with the synth and just making sound and tweaking knobs. And once the synth was almost talking, but was making cool sound. So I record that, and I was keeping turning knobs and stuff. And after I remember I let Yann listen to it, and Yann put a filters on it. I remember you sent me back, and we cut it into pieces and sometimes use it at some different moments in the game. For example, into the slums. There is two robots who are sending paints to each other, like big buckets of paint. And they make noises like when the guy is lancing the paint, he's making the sound, and when the guy grabbing like the bucket, is making a sound as well. So that's some sounds where they were made. With synthesizer, so kind of this was kind of trial and error approach.
It's something that we call reactions.
Yeah,
speaking voices that are not going to be translated into text. It sounds slightly different.
Yeah, my favorite one is when the robot falls when you go between his legs when they walk and you make them fall. That's very nice.
Yeah. So that was one of the process. Also, as I said earlier, it's true we haven't spoke so much about props, all the objects in the game. So Yann already did many before I arrived into the game, but afterwards there was more objects and we needed more variation. So I was using objects from home, like empty bottles and cans, again buckets, metal buckets, whatever, and just recording the sound, cutting it and put it into the game and tried it, see how it works, Well, for example, we had some slide sounds, but I think Yann had different process than mine. But for me, for example, when we have a bottle, if it was a bottle of plastic, I was just putting the mic, into the surface, and then just do it, actually roll it or slide it if it was a slide, and then slide it enough long so I could make a loop out of it. Then afterwards, when we were putting the bottle, the slide was on, it was triggered basically. So stuff like that. Many animation or mostly cinematics as well. It was mostly Foley, like some movement. For example, there is a robot into Midtown who's reading the journal. So it's just like, taking a paper and recording few movements just to give more sound. To help to what we see on the picture. So to give some context.
Yeah, did you have anything where you needed a special prop and had to like hunt for it? Something where you're like, nothing I have at home works here?
Try to remember that, but I think mostly what I've recorded, it was mainly objects from home. So I don't think I've really used something so special to make a new sound with it. So yeah, it was mostly objects from home.
Yeah, that's great. I always hate that when I have like, I have no idea how to do this, and but yeah, sometimes you can find great stuff at a flea market or in someone's basement. Was like, that sounds nice. Can I just borrow that for a day?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And maybe also to you, Raphael, because you also worked on film and TV, which is more of a linear medium, which is a linear medium. What aspects of working on a video game set this apart from your previous sound projects and like film and TV work?
But I mean, video games is not linear, so you have integration, so it's very different. But I mean, what was similar maybe, it was recording Foley. So for some short film, I made some sound from some short films. From, for example, being on a shoot and recording dialogues and stuff like that. I mean, all the sound from the film on set, and then after doing the basically post production. So it was I was mainly recording afterward Foley movement again to what the actors were doing, and then cleaning the dialogue, and and that's it. But
yeah, it's just interesting what is different and what is the same. I mean, I would guess Foley would be probably the same, especially
similar.
For cinematics in the game, or similar, But otherwise, you would need like many variations. Where in a movie you need just the one scene, right?
Yeah, totally. Like for example, in a movie you watch the scene. Each time you will watch the scene, it will be the same. But in the game, it's so different because the player decide where to go. Even for example, Stray is a bit linear, but you can still sometimes move in different places. So as Yann mentioned earlier, some music were triggered if some music were not triggered for 10 or 15 minutes. So this will never happen in movie, for example.
Yeah, of course, yeah. You can't wait around in a movie for the plot.
Totally, yeah.
Do side quests.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had this thing. We had a collection of very distant sounds that would be triggered here and there randomly to just give life to the universe, if the player was not. We worked on that, both of us, but you have made a lot of distant sounds like this to just.
Yeah. We're recording different sounds, and after I think we already put reverbs on it as well before even implemented them to the game a bit. Then afterwards, when they were into the game, they were playing randomly at different distance. So that that's something you don't do in movies.
Yeah, fill out the ambience. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe can you tell me what was like the most interesting or challenging sound design task you had on Stray?
The most challenging, I think, for myself, I would say it was the truck pursuit. It's like at the end of jail, when you escape jail, there is a truck, and there is so we have to make a sound actually for the vehicle, and it was quite hard because the vehicle you are like in real time, Then after we jumped to the cinematic, and it was quite hard to make it sound consistent, to get the sound, the tonality of the motor sound convincing from real time to cinematic, to the cinematic. So that was something spent quite a lot of time to get it right.
Yeah, I remember that the pitch would suddenly jump from whatever pitch the vehicle was driving to the cinematic one, and that's a problem.
Yes. Yeah. So we have to spend a bit of time on that to get it sounding convincing, like.
Yeah, and how did you do that then? Did you programmatically adjust the pitch towards the end so it would go smoothly into the other scene, or what was the solution to that?
Well, the solution, I think, was I used the recording. I mean, the cinematic was kind of done, and before actually that the sounds in real time worked well. So I think we had one accelerator, one of the sound which was accelerating, which we put it and was a bit of the pitch. It's quite tricky to explain, but at the beginning you jump to the truck, Clémentine start to go, so the sound of the motor start to accelerating. Then after there is a kind of different shots. We don't see Clémentine with the truck, but when we come back and jump to the truck, there is another sound which is accelerating, but which is not the sound triggered. This is another sound basically, which is long enough. Yeah. Which is long enough, but when we jump to the truck, this sound is triggered. This new sound. We kind of hear the gears. But the gears are not real time. I mean, the gears are from the recording. Mm-hmm. Even if we are real time, we are not pushing gears. The gears are into the recording. And then after I kind of calculated about the time when this sound is triggered, the car goes. Then after a while, after a certain timing, the cinematic starts. So I made the pitch after a while to sound similar to the one in the cinematic.
So slow adjustments, it blends. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah. And maybe for you, Yann, also, what was your most interesting sound design task?
I think the one that I had to revise the most was the talks, because at some point it was not. Currently in the final game, it's based on loops. It's not even based on loops because of a technical problem, but at some point in the past it was based on individual syllabs that we blended together to create organic, ever-changing dialogue that would adapt to the text. But it was not convincing and we had to drop it. And I think a challenging task. I'm glad you think it sounds consistent because at some point when I started working I started working at home to create the assets, but then I was integrating the sounds at the studio, and I was working on headphones.
Oh yeah.
Then at some point, and it was during COVID, I started working at home, even for the integration, and I started hearing everything with speakers instead of headphones. And at this point, it was kind of dispiriting that a lot of soft noise were not audible at all, and a lot of the loudest ones were suddenly very, very loud and distorting, and I couldn't really. There was no easy solutions. We were not using a sound engine. We were using the Unreal built-in audio engine, and there is a kind of limiter compressor system in it, but it doesn't. At that point, it didn't work very well. I know they changed a lot of stuff recently in the audio engine, so maybe it's not the case anymore. but I couldn't just say I'll put a limiter and this will be okay.
Yeah.
So I had to just manually go through all the sounds and say, okay, this one will be slightly louder, this one slightly softer, and do that over and over until it felt okay. But it took some time. I wasn't sure I would succeed at this.
Yeah, if you know behind the curtain what goes on, it's always
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a bit messy, but yeah, as I said, the end result is very great. So kudos on you for taking the time to adjusting that meticulously. And yeah, maybe a tip to other sound designers who are maybe starting out: try to listen on headphones and speakers and try to switch, because
it's
different
good to
systems is
switch.
always different. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And listening on headphone is good too. I know that
Of course,
a lot of people say that you should avoid, but no.
No,
I think both of
Yeah, I agree. You need to test as many systems as you can. Maybe even if you have like a studio, then also on a living room system or something, because the coloration is different. So yeah, maybe also a question to both of you. Do you have any thoughts like on the future of audio and gaming and how it's evolving? I mean, maybe especially AI or maybe other technologies, because as you said, like with the integration things. They are already in a good place, but it's like moving into many different directions, and there's new technologies and new techniques every day. So, any thoughts on the future of game audio?
It's hard to tell because I've always been I've been working in audio in games for like more than 15 years now, but I always work with very low tech. I always work with either custom engine or almost nothing at all, and I have to build it myself. So I'm not really aware of the state of the art technologies. I've never even used once Wise or Fmod, except for when I was a student. So maybe Raphaël, you know more about it.
About what do you mean
like
about Wise?
Wise, and like I don't know, like the top top shelf.
I use it on before I use it on some small project. So yeah, what I can say is like when we arrive into the project and we work in Unreal, it was some stuff I thought it was harder to do, basically, but it was good in some way as well, because as you said, Yann, you have to make everything yourself. So for myself, I had to put my head into blueprints and stuff, and it make you think about the process and stuff. So it's quite interesting. But all I can say about the future of game audio, basically, for me, I think it will become better. If you check early games and you compare it from if you compare the audio from games from now, just the quality became better and better. So as technology does as well. So yeah,
I'm kind of curious of the AI field in the audio though. I'm always experimenting. Each time I see like a neural networks that claims it can generate audio or modify audio in any way that sounds interesting, I test it. I usually like spend some time installing whatever I need to test it, and I sometimes use them. But so far, I'd say that I haven't seen many convincing real-time things, and I don't really care that much about it. I care more about the non-real-time approach. Like, I've used some tools where I could say, like, take all the time you want, like take days if you want, but generate me like 10 seconds of this dialogue switch into like I don't know. And I've got really interesting results so far, but it was more like it was interesting, and I had to use it creatively to make sense out of it, but it was still to the state where I could not just, I don't know, I could I can imagine that some people are working right now on systems where you can just imitate a Foley with your mouse and it will generate the Foley like perfectly. As far as I know, we are not there yet. So right now I'm more like I've been trying to make a creative use of it rather than a precise targeted use of it. I don't know if this makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's the same for me. I like it to test around with whatever comes up and to see what it can offer. And sometimes it gives me maybe an impulse to do something. But yeah, as you said, also for me, it's nothing. It's not there yet. At least nothing that I have seen that would be groundbreaking. Where you're like, you just push a button and you save like hours of work.
Sure.
Yeah. And also, I don't think I want to, because I really like recording stuff, especially Foley. So why would I want to give that up? So
we never know if we really want it. Same for music.
Yeah,
We are kind of there yet with music, actually. So that's kind of frightening, but that's I'm curious about it at the same time. I don't know.
I think people will use it as a tool, and to be honest, what I'm really interested in is that's the only thing I'm really interested in is something that can clean up audio like perfectly. Because cleaning up something where it's like you have this take which is amazing and you need to have it, and you have to clean that up, and it's just.
Takes time,
Yeah, and it's, at least for me, it's not fun work. I mean, I know people who really are zen about that and like, I can spend 2 hours cleaning up stuff, but for me, it's like a chore.
And it's not really a creative job to clean the audio. So I think it's audio to leave that. It's okay to leave that to machines.
Yes. But we shouldn't give them just the shit jobs, because when they take over, it's like
right.
Yeah.
And maybe can you give maybe an advice to aspiring composers and sound designers? I mean, especially you, Yann, you've worked a long time in game audio, but also you, Raphael. Anything you can give as a guiding light?
For myself, I would say for sound design, be passionate by what you do, and you're passionate by what you do, and then practice it, and look into the sound and games or whatever you want to do. Like just get inspiration from others and experiment with sound and with what you like to achieve and so yeah.
Yeah, for music, I would say like I have some sound that it's a very specific piece of advice, and I don't know if it makes sense, but I noticed that we tend to maybe to forbid ourselves to give space to the music. Like I've noticed that with movies, for instance, like when you have something happening on the movie and nothing justifies that the music would change, usually the music doesn't change. It stays on a pedal-based harmony, and it doesn't dare to change. You know what I mean? It's
yes.
And I have the feeling that this has come. It wasn't like this like 50 years ago. I when I watch old peplums noir movies, like the music is totally telling a story that sometimes has nothing to do with the actual story on the screen, and that's okay. Or I mean, that's okay given the context, but we have, I don't know, maybe we have gotten used to the music that is a bit more shy and is really linked to what you see on screen. Which in some way is good, but I would advise people to not be afraid to just let the music express something, and maybe it would not fit completely, but it's fine. I know that I don't even dare to do this, so it's easy to say, but I wish people would be more open to do that.
I think that's good advice. And I can really see your point there, because music has the option of adding another layer of story to it. That's maybe not so obvious, but that can elevate the whole product. So,
so
the whole art piece. Cool.
And even if it doesn't, it's worth trying.
Yeah, of course, always. I mean, experimenting and trying. Most of the really surprising works of art, be it movies or games, were either like shut down by many publishers because it was too weird, too out there, or it doesn't work, and then it turns out to be a cult classic. So
That happens.
I mean, a lot of those don't work, but most of those that work were before seen as not a safe bet and maybe something you shouldn't do. Yeah, and then one question that I always ask my guests, and I'm interested to hear what you say about that, is what was the first sound you ever recorded and why did you record it?
Oh,
yeah. That's interesting.
I think I have actually a very big folder of all the sounds that I recorded, and I kept a date. The oldest date that I have in this folder is something that it's dated around the 90s, so I was like probably less than 10 at that point, and I was using a tiny microphone, and the sound is called Dolphin. But I know that I recorded it at home and with my voice, so it's probably just me and possibly some effect based on the Windows recorder.
So it wasn't a dolphin.
It kind of sounds like a dolphin. It's but I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't precisely remember.
And for you, Raphael?
For me, I think it was footsteps. But I think I can't remember when it was, but it was quite a long time ago, and I think I was trying to do the sound of a short film actually, and I'm not too sure if it was the first sound, to be honest, because I had a recorder as well. Maybe it wasn't footsteps. Maybe it was just ambiances. Maybe it was rain. It's quite hard to say. Maybe it was rain, but I remember. Yeah, I was trying to, because it was a take from the film, which was, it was some, we could not use this audio, so I was trying to redo the footsteps at home and watching the movie, and I understood how hard it was to actually record the footstep in time to make it sounding. It was example, the scene was like in the stairway, so I was doing the footstep in my room, and it was not sounding convincing at all, so that's how I started to understood how hard it is to, so even I was trying some reverbs and stuff after, and so that's how I understood how it is it can be hard to do Foley, particularly when you replace an audio scene for a movie or whatever, because you have to match the other scene and the shoes and everything. So yeah, I think it was footstep, but I'm not too sure. I probably have recorded some other stuff which I don't remember.
Yeah, that's fine. But very cool. Yeah, I also remember my first time trying to match something, some material where it's like, this is way harder than it looks. Now I understand why it's a whole profession.
Yeah.
So that was essentially that was all the questions I had. So the only thing that's really left is if you want to shout out anyone or a project you're working on, if you can talk about it, now's your time to say whatever you want to say.
No, I think I'm done, and yeah, I don't know about you.
Me too. I'm done. Me
yeah.
too. Yeah, I'm done as well.
Okay, nothing to shout out. That's okay. Then thank you both again for taking the time to speak to me. And
Thanks, man.
You did an amazing job on Stray. I really enjoyed it. I just recently played it because I had it on my list forever, and I was like, now try it out. And I was really surprised how good the audio was. So great job, and thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.